We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
All right, so moving on to Charles. Charles has his projector connected to his AV receiver via HDMI. I'm assuming his is not an $80 little Pico projector. His sources are DirecTV and a DVD player, and everything has been working fine. He got an Amazon Fire Stick, and when he plugged it into the available HDMI port on the receiver, I assume, he got picture but no sound. Any suggestions? Yeah, man, there's... you start with the basic troubleshooting.
Yeah, well,
plug it back in first.
My real basic question here is, did he plug it into the HDMI port on his projector?
Yeah, that's
because
notice what I said. I said I assume on the receiver.
Yeah, and I don't, because if you're just reading the quick start guide for the Amazon Fire Stick, it says plug this into an HDMI port on your display. That's what it says to do.
Yep.
His display in his case is a projector. His projector does not have any means of sending the audio from the projector back to the receiver. It doesn't have HDMI audio return channel. So I'm wondering
it's that simple.
If it's
that would be
simple.
great.
It very easily could be.
Right.
And like, it's an easy thing to do. It's like, hey, the quick start guide said to plug this into my display. I plugged it into my display. I got a picture. I didn't get any sound.
That makes perfect sense, and that's an easy thing to do, and I understand why anybody would do it.
For sure.
I've had great luck with my Chromecast in the back of my cheapo Yamaha receiver. Unless there's something terribly wrong with that stick, it should make sound.
Now, if he has in fact taken the Amazon Fire Stick and plugged it into one of the HDMI ports on his AV receiver, which, by the way, Charles, that's what you should do if you haven't. That's where the Amazon Fire Stick should plug in. It should plug into the back of your AV receiver, one of the AV receiver's HDMI inputs. Now, if that's what you've done and you're still getting picture but no sound, you might want to check the setup menu for your AV receiver, because it is possible to assign an audio input to a given HDMI port. For example, you can say, for HDMI port number 5, use the optical audio input, right? That's something you can do on most AV receivers, at which point it'll say, well, now when you switch to HDMI input 5, I'm going to go looking for the audio signal on the optical input port. I'm not going to go looking for it on the HDMI port.
Yep.
And sometimes by default, that's just the way it's set up, particularly for the auxiliary HDMI input. Very often that by default is set to one of the coaxial digital audio inputs or one of the optical audio inputs. So it could be as simple as making sure the setting for whatever HDMI input you've used on the back of your AV receiver is set to use that same HDMI input for the audio.
That would be frustrating and also not Charles's fault.
Oh, God,
because that seems really mean. Like I didn't know some defaulted away from the HDMI port like that for the audio. That's crazy. That's rude.
That's what they do.
That is not fair.
Like I say, in particular ones that are labeled auxiliary, that's often the case.
Okay.
So absolutely no blame either way, Charles. This is not as plug and play and easy as it ought to be. We 100% agree on that. But those would be my suspects, and hopefully that'll solve the problem.
Yeah, let us know, Charles.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.